Hey everyone, welcome back to the arena. I'm MD, joined by Kobe, and once again a lovely guest that we'll introduce in a second. But before any conversation, if you've been watching the show, listening to us, you know we won't start a conversation until we first thank everybody who's taken some time to listen, spread the word, which has been really cool. A lot of people that I've never met before, and just getting screenshots of what they've thought and how we've helped people that we've never met, and I think that's really awesome to think about. So thank you to those people that are out there just following the podcast and picking up the conversation with us.
Yeah, what's up, guys? Kobe here. This one's a little special. I think I've said that maybe in all of them in some extent, but this one definitely a little bit more, just because I've got Alyssa here, same last name, my sister, and I'll try to keep the introduction short here, but, by and large, this is the most important person along with my other sister in my life. And I would not be doing this show, and to be quite frank, if it wasn't for them and the support that they've given me throughout the years. So I'm so excited to share this one with you all, to have this conversation. I got to be honest, I haven't been nervous for any of these. I'm a little bit nervous just because this is just the most important person in my life. So anyways, without further ado, this is Alyssa Kovatchis. I'll let her, give a little bit of a background on herself, kind of how she got to where she is today, and we'll take it from there. So Alyssa, if you want to introduce yourself and kind of provide your background.
Yeah, thanks, Matt. Excited to be here. I went to the University of Illinois along with my twin sister, Jamie, as well, and went there for 4 years, studied elementary education. So I taught fourth grade for 3 years, right during the heart of the pandemic. And then most recently, I transitioned out of the classroom, and I now work in sales for an ed tech company. And I'm very happy with that change, and that's where I'm at today.
That's great, and we'll get into because I do want to dive into a little bit more on the career change, because I think it's a big jump, and two, working as a teacher during COVID. Like, you kind of just glossed over that, but I remember seeing it kind of firsthand of some of the stuff that you had to work through and deal with, and it sounded very stressful. So I would like to talk about that too. But I guess first,
Are you nervous for this right now?
A
He
little
just said
bit.
he's nervous. Are you nervous?
I am a little bit. I didn't think about it.
I didn't want to gloss over that point.
Yeah, you know what? I didn't get emotional, so that's good, because I was a little worried that I might. But no, now that we're kind of free form here, I'm super excited to have the conversation.
Yeah.
And so I guess I want to ask you, because I don't think I have before, is like when I opened up to you and Jamie, you were the first two people that I was kind of sharing my, what I've been struggling with. And I remember I sent a text, because that's all I could kind of muster up to do. And your guys' response was like, "Are you joking?" That was like, you guys were like, "Are you like," I joke a lot, but you can imagine how well, if you will, I hid. Go ahead.
Did you lead in at all, or did you just drop it on them?
I think I just dropped it.
Yeah.
Just a
I
paragraph like
It was a
that?
I
paragraph.
don't even remember
Yeah.
what prompted me that day, but I just remember sitting on the couch at my parents' place and just being like, all right, I'm just going to send this. And I was sending it with tears in my eyes, but more of just like a relief. And again, the response was, "Are you joking?" So I guess my question is not in the bed. And then like once I was like, no, like, I know you think I'm joking. I'm not proud of this. I'm ashamed, but no, I'm not. I want to get your perspective on that. Like, from your eyes, what did you think? Or
Yeah. Yeah, no, totally. And it's funny because I can like take myself back to that day where you texted us, and I remember it was one of the last days of, it was getting towards summer, and it was getting towards the end of teaching, and I was headed outside just for like a little break, and I got that text. And yeah, like you said, when I first got that, to be clear, no, like our relationship, like Matt can be very like jokey and could be sarcastic sometimes, so it wouldn't be crazy for him to like throw a random joke in there, but I was very torn. I was like he said, he dropped this long text and just went straight into it. So my first thought was like, I can't tell if you're joking or not. So once I did say that, and then once I realized he's like, no, I'm not joking. Then honestly, my first thought, like, as cheesy as it is, it's like my heart kind of broke in that moment, because I just felt so sad that like you were going through that for so long and like never could tell anybody. And like being his sister's, yeah, it was just hard to hear because like the fact that he also was so scared to share that, knowing how close we are, I just felt bad that he went through that without support. And I was like, oh my God, like this change is not a thing, you know?
So did you have any idea, or like, I guess I have like multiple questions,
Yeah.
but were you ever suspicious that something might have been going on with him, like overall, or was that just always who he was to you?
Yeah, honestly, no. That's why I was so surprised when he did text us. Like, I had not even the slightest clue. And like you've talked about it on this podcast before too. You were a lot different back then, just like who you were, how you acted, and seeing like who you are now after coming out of that, and just like how much happier and like just better of a person you seem to be. That's why I was so like, that's who he was to me. I had no clue that. But the thing was, it didn't change anything. It was like, oh my God, I can't believe you've been going through this. But like, you know, it changes nothing. Like, we love you. You shouldn't be ashamed. Like, you are who you are. We love you no matter what.
And I'm going strong here. That hit me pretty hard because I take myself back to that moment.
Yeah.
And I think that just goes to show, like when I say how well I hit it, which is actually it was very toxic and hard for me. That just, was repressing and suppressing a lot of feelings and trying to really be someone I wasn't, because I didn't want to let anyone down, and more than anything, let myself down. So, and that's been the feedback from everyone, is I had no idea, which again just goes to show, what I was able to do, which was for the worst. But your next, and the support, what they said was exactly what I needed to hear, because I feel for people that, whether it's coming out or whatever it is, and you have someone that responds with, I don't know, not the level of support that they did, like I could have spiraled. Like I'm sure there's people that, from their family or really close friends that, maybe are a little bit more closed-minded, and I can only imagine what getting something like, kind of judging you, what that would do to someone.
How fearful were you of, like, anticipating their response?
I knew 100% that they would be supportive. We can talk a little bit more about our relationship and how it's kind of gotten to where it's at. But like I said, my sisters are the two most important people in my life, and I tell them everything. And for a long time, and actually, so I wasn't fearful at all. It was more of just me saying it. Like, it's really hard to explain. It was just me actually accepting it.
Yeah.
And sending that text message just made it feel very real. And that's why, like, when I said I was tearing up and very emotional when I sent it, I knew there would be 100% support. I knew there'd be support when I told you. I knew there'd be support when I told my parent.
So did you did you go through any of like hypothetical responses in your head? Like, were you trying to see around that corner? Because I know I can't say I know, but I feel like I would want to like anticipate what the menu of option of responses would be.
I did. Going up to that moment, a lot in the moment. Again, I actually was very confident that they would be supportive, but for years I was playing so many different scenarios in my head.
Are you joking one of the possible scenarios?
No, it actually wasn't, but I wasn't surprised when they said that, because I did hide it. I hid it very well. So, and I am like, I'm sarcastic. I fuck around. Like, I'm kind of, I can be goofy, especially with them. So I wasn't surprised, but it was exactly what I needed to hear. And then I remember the next thing that you said, or one of the next things was, you should get therapy. And that was the first time I've ever heard that. At the time, I had a very negative stigma. There was definitely a stigma associated with it when I heard it, but I remember, what's the worst that can happen? And it was you specifically that recommended it. And I'm so thankful that you did, because it completely changed my life. So I want to ask you just maybe about your experience with therapy, why that was kind of your thought of like, okay, maybe you should get this.
Yeah. I think, because at that point, it's not like I've gone to therapy for years and years and years, but so it is a little bit more recent for me. But at that point, once you had told me, I had done it for about a year, and I saw how helpful it was for me. And then my initial thought of why you should get it was because you were asking for a lot of advice and a lot of different pieces from me and Jamie, and I just felt like I'm not an expert in any way, and I would never want to like say something and you know, you have to believe it or you have to follow it, because I just didn't feel like super qualified. Like I can give the support, but like the advice part or like what you should do always felt hard for me because I'm not an expert. And so I was like, this is the perfect time, like find someone who knows how to work through a lot of these things. We can be here to support you, but the thing you have to work through, that's going to be with like a mental health professional. So that's why I kind of was like,
Yeah. How long had you been leveraging therapy for yourself leading up to that point?
yeah, at that point, yeah, I think it had been a couple years. I remember the time, like for me, when I first wanted to get help, because I've like been pretty open with my mental health, and like I've dealt with it since I was little, but really like becoming into your 20s, you hit a different experience, and coming out of college is even more so, and then COVID and everything like that. And so I was like, you know what, like, and as you said, there's a stigma for men to get therapy, but there's almost like this little bit of a stigma for women too, or just people in general, or at least a few years ago. I think it's so much more talked about now. But yeah, actually, a couple of my friends had said that they'd done it before. They had stopped, and I was like, how did it go? Like, did you guys like it? Is it helpful? They're like, yeah, it was great. So I was like, all right, well, you know what? Like, I wasn't feeling my best in whatever situation that was a couple of years ago. And I'm like, let me just bite the bullet and let me just try it, because what's the worst?
So you were contemplating it, and then when you ultimately decided to go,
Yeah.
were you more in the camp of like, I have this one thorn in my side, or are you more in the camp of like, just overall, I feel like I can better myself? Like, where were you?
That's a good question. I think there was, at that point, I had just like a couple of things like personally, relationship-wise at that point that I wanted to go through, but there were a lot of things I went through that weren't addressed, like insecurity-wise, and also just like, yeah, I mean, not to go super far into it, but just like little things with like being a twin and things like that. There wasn't like one specific thing, but I was like, there's a lot of things that I've been insecure about that I've never addressed.
And I'm not even asking you.
Yeah, but there were just a lot of things that had never been addressed, and I'm like, you know what? Like, this is the perfect time to like address some of these insecurities. And it's funny, I remember like my first. I have a great therapist, but my first meeting with her, I was just sobbing the entire time because I had never talked about my feelings before, and it was wild. I was like, and I wasn't even saying anything bad. It was just like the fact that I had to talk about my feelings. It was so foreign to me.
Did you have to hide in your room like you did?
Well, thank you. I hid in their room. I was in Jamie's room for the first session.
Yeah.
And I thank you for giving me the heads up that, because what you said that was helpful for me is you might not feel great after some of these.
Yeah.
And I think I needed to hear that, because once I accepted that I was going to get therapy, I think I had this notion in my head that, okay, I'm doing it, now things are going to get better, right? Like immediately. Like I'm taking initiative, and that's not how it was at all. And so setting that ground, like setting that framework of like, okay, this is going to take some time is what I need to hear. And sure enough, like the first session, I mean, I was, I was crying. I mean, it was painful, but it was a good painful because I was able to be open with my therapist. The first session, we had someone on last week who, I was surprised to hear that, it took her like 6 months to, like, she went for 6 months before she actually hit what she went there for. So my question to you is, were you able, kind of similar to me, to kind of lay your life out there your first session, or did it take you some time to build trust with a therapist?
Yeah, that's a good question. Honestly, I think I laid it out pretty quickly. I was like, here are the things I'm struggling with, and obviously we had to go, one by one, depending on what it is. But yeah, I don't think it took me. I built a pretty strong trust with my therapist, and that's why I was so much like, I want you to do this. But I was also very aware of the fact that not a lot of people, like, I think it's important that people know that you're not always going to click with like your first therapist, and it's so important to have a good relationship with your therapist. Otherwise, you're like putting in the work for nothing.
Did you do it in person?
I didn't, because it was during COVID, and now we just kind of keep it virtual.
I think that was a blessing.
So,
for me.
So you suggested it to Matt.
Yeah.
I'm only calling you Matt because
I'm
it's your
surprised
sister.
by that.
Yeah, a lot of respect for the family, but you had suggested it to him. Seems like the day of that same conversation. how much legwork did it take to ultimately sell him on it, or was it just like you should get it and he's like, all right, I'm going, or like were there a lot of Q&A, was there a lot of like, because now you're in sales and we're going to get into your career change, and like obviously that's my arena, right? But I want to know, like, did you have to sell him on it? Did he have questions?
I think I did a little bit. Like, you definitely didn't, I didn't say do therapy and then the next day you were like, okay, I'm going to do it. It definitely was like, he would ask more questions, he'd come to us, and I'd be like, I try to give the advice I could, but I still felt like I just kind of push him back, like, hey, maybe it'd be good to talk to someone else because, you know, I don't know the answer to that or whatever it is.
Yeah,
so,
you guys were great. I mean, the amount of, because once I got it off my chest, I mean, it was such a relief, but also I had so many questions. I'm like, where do I go now? Like, do I tell someone else? What do I do? Right. So there was a lot of follow up, and I mean, you guys, I think I've toned it down now because I think I'm in a better spot. But I used to come to you guys with a lot of stuff, and you guys were always there, and it's what I needed. But I think you did the right thing, looking back. Of you offered the support that I needed, and then kind of directed me to someone that could really help. Because I do value your guys' advice, but to your point, you're not an expert, and there are certain things that I needed to work through with a professional.
Did you battle any insecurity, Alyssa, when you started to go? Like, were you open about the fact that you were seeing a therapist to family and friends, or was that something you kept to yourself and then like maybe confided into your sister first? And then how did that process go?
Yeah, that's a good question. Because I think, that's a really good question. I think I was definitely open with it, especially like I said over the last few years. I think when I was younger and I dealt with things, I was like so terrified to like let anybody know that I was dealing with like anything mental health related. So I just kept everything to myself, and probably just my mom. I like had a very close trust with her. So that was really it. And then, but I didn't do therapy. It was more just other things. But then once, I think it's gotten a lot talked about in the last like 5 years or so, and it came to more of an acceptance. And I heard friends saying they've done therapy. I heard people talking about it more on social media, and I'm like, I think at the end of the day, everyone just wants like people to be aware of it and like to be understood. And so when you see other people talking about it, I was like, okay, like it's in the media now and people are talking about it. My friends are talking about it. And so once I made the decision to get therapy, I was pretty open about, like, I told, my family, they were like, great, like, they're on board. I think I told you, I told my friends, they're like, great. Like, I never had anyone,
Yeah, because I think once you get it, you realize, like, it takes courage to admit you need help and to get therapy.
Yeah.
And so it's like, you want to talk about it. You want to tell people, like, hey, yeah, I'm getting therapy. And so once you go, it does, you realize the courage it takes, the vulnerability it takes, and it's like, I'm proud, I'm strong, I'm not weak. So I think that's why I was super open about it. That's why I started this show, because I am proud that I've been able to kind of work through it, and I think you probably were too, and that's why you felt like there's no shame in working on yourself. And I also think what you said there is so powerful. I think people need to hear it. Is all you have to do is talk about it. I was talking to someone in improv today after class about, like you said, you felt comfortable because you saw it on social media, people talking about social media, you saw people talking about it in the news or whomever, you heard other people directly talking about it. Like, that's all it takes, is to just hear people be vulnerable.
And normalize it.
And normalize it's okay, because again, it creates, there's so much more inner peace when you're able to talk about your feelings to other people and confide in them, and then to get the support. I mean, it goes a long way. And there's one other thing that my therapist told me last week, actually, and I think you said it too, so maybe I want you to say it, but because I think you said it in the first show, and I kind of took it for granted. I've been taking it for granted, of like, we've got a pretty unique relationship, like me and my sisters, Jamie and Alyssa, that I've taken for granted for a long time. Like, when I was talking to my therapist, she's like, because I told her Alyssa was coming on, and she just said, it's very unique to have, especially at this age, to have a sibling relationship that is as close, as you guys are, especially when, it's different sexes, like, guy and girl, like, to be so open and to have such a good relationship. So I'm curious from you, like, I remember you said it once, like, what is it from your perspective, like, kind of our relationship? And then I kind of want to ask Alyssa as well.
Yeah, I mean, I was saying it in the context of like, what is it that you felt you needed to talk to a therapist about that you couldn't talk to your sisters about? Looking back, not the best question in the sense that, like, to Alyssa's point, she's like, I was there to provide the support. I was open ears. You could tell her anything. It was about having professional level guidance delivered back to you. That was the gap. Good answer to a otherwise mild question, but yeah, I guess that was my point. Was like, there's something that you had suppressed within you for over 20 years. No hyperbole. And that is crazy to me that like not even your sisters knew because of what I perceive as one of the closest, most open and transparent relationships. So that, I guess, like, I could see hiding it within the circle of 3 people, but like hiding it just within yourself, that was a pretty fascinating barrier to me because I do view your relationship with your siblings as a very open and honest and transparent one. So
Yeah, I know that. I think that makes sense, and from an outsider's perspective, I could totally see why you'd be like, you haven't told them, you know. But from my perspective, I guess I think, and actually, I want to hear from you first, your thoughts, just on like our relationship, how it's evolved. I feel like we've always been close. I mean, when we were kids. I mean, like any older brother, I was a nuisance. You know, did everything an typical older brother would do.
Yeah, but so she said, sorry, but she said she felt so bad that you had been suffering with that, right? Like, did any part of you feel like why the hell didn't you tell me? Like, man, like, I thought what we had was a transparent relationship. Like, did you feel any like betrayal might be the wrong word, right? But like, did you feel any like, gosh, I wish you would have said something sooner? Like, what the hell, Matt?
Yeah, totally.
I guess I'm calling you Matt. This is throwing me off.
Throwing me off.
No, that's actually a really good question. I honestly hadn't thought about it. To be honest, no. I didn't feel like, I never took it personally, like he isn't telling us because he doesn't trust us. I had a lot of like empathy for him and a lot of like compassion for the fact that like what he was going through is something that's just not relatable for me. So who am I to say like, or be upset that you didn't tell me when at the end of the day that was something you had to like come to terms with on your own and then tell us. So I didn't take it personally. I honestly just felt bad that, yeah, like I said, it like just honestly hurt to know that you were going through that alone. But it wasn't like I ever felt like you should have told me. Like it was never like that.
It's amazing. It's amazing how like that kind of empathy prevents a person from doing the opposite of like selfishly making it about them. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Even if it was just within yourself, like you didn't have to say anything,
Right?
But like you could have went into the mirror and admitted to yourself, like, damn, I feel a little bit betrayed. But like for you to come out here and say like, no, I didn't feel that. Like that's genuine empathy in that moment, right? Because like you didn't have to admit to yourself anything otherwise.
Right.
And I think that's why vulnerability is such an act of selflessness, because you're allowing someone else to help you in a sense and hear you and understand you. And you probably really wanted that. I didn't feel comfortable doing it, and by not being vulnerable, I wasn't even giving you guys or anyone the chance to provide your support and get me out of the place I was in. And I think when you're able to be vulnerable, you're giving other people that, you know, close to you, whomever, the chance to do that, because everyone wants to help others. Like you probably want nothing more than to help me. When I hear someone struggling, I want nothing more than to help them. But in order for that to happen, that person has to be vulnerable and confide, you know, and share whatever they're dealing with.
Do you think there was ever a stage in your life where you would not have been ready to field that sort of like conversation, or like do you feel like, oh, I've been a teacher and, you know, maybe having to listen to students, was there any like skill set that you leaned back on in that moment or like throughout that journey with him? I'm like, I'm a more mature individual. I have maybe a set of skills that are kind of is, you know, whether it's my set of ears that I can listen, my level of empathy. Like, did you, I might be asking questions that this is all subconscious, right? But like kind of looking back and reflecting, did you feel like you had to tap into a skill bank at all?
Yeah, that's a good question. And yeah, I mean, to go off using my, you know, education background, like you said, it was a lot of listening and it was a lot of dealing with different types of families and students and just always having like an open ear. But I think for me, and one of the nice things for why I felt like I had a lot of empathy was for him was because like I said, I had dealt with my own like insecurities and like mental health things. So like I understood the fact that like it's really hard to be vulnerable. I could go on about vulnerability all day because that's something I've worked with, and like that's, I mean, I don't know about you, but I feel like you said, being vulnerable is the only way to like feel connected to people. It's the only way to like truly get to that next step. And like
it's the birthplace of all emotions, good and bad, like positive and negative, that you need to feel.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people shy away from it because they're scared of, you know, being vulnerable because it is uncomfortable. But yeah, I just had a lot of empathy because I related to him a lot. I knew what it felt like to struggle.
Because you had gone there yourself.
Yeah.
You had been vulnerable with yourself. You know what it's like to be in that state.
Yeah.
And it's therefore a lot easier for you to empathize with someone that's, while it's for a different reason, still be in a similar state. And that's why I think in order to truly have empathy, you need to have vulnerability, or else it's very hard to feel what someone else is feeling if you've never gone there.
Exactly.
And also, just a quick like observation on vulnerability is like, I really started to take to this idea that when you want somebody to be something towards you, so like for example, if you wanted a friend or an intimate other to be like vulnerable with you, one of the best things that you can do is be vulnerable yourself, and that inspires them to reciprocate the behavior. I've had some of my best conversations as of late, whether it's a close friend, a family member, by me starting and being the one who's open and honest. Kind of aside, like not related to you two, but like that.
No, yeah.
I think that there's a point there of like, if you're trying to create a more transparent relationship, be the person who starts with transparency, lead, right, and then sort of inspire it by example.
And sometimes it still might not, like that person might not be ready, but you're giving it a chance, right?
We'll continue, yeah. Gradually.
Absolutely.
And like, get to your point, I've had some of the most beautiful conversations just by, again, being vulnerable, and then people, you'd be just so surprised at what people are going through or just how they're feeling. And that's why I think, again, going back to vulnerability, it's the birthplace of so many different things. Is like, it's taught me to just be kind to everyone, because you don't know what people are going through until they tell you, and you're like, holy crap, I had no idea, just like when I shared my story or whomever. So I think it's very important. It's very hard, but it's very important. It's one of the building blocks of kind of becoming kind of the best version of yourself, if you will. And I kind of want to touch on just like, for me, and you tell me if this is how you felt at all. But I remember, like, our relationship been very good it's gotten very strong over the years. I think a lot of that is my doing, and I'm curious what you think. Like, because before the last few months, I didn't really feel super connected to anyone. You know, like whether it be my friends, the only people I really felt connected to, and that I could somewhat be myself, were you, Jamie, and even your roommates. Like, I really, from my perception, from my eyes, it's like you guys have a really, really solid foundation, like relationship-wise. You guys are all super open, like genuine with each other. So I just would always come to you guys like, hey, what are you doing this weekend? You know, that's what I wanted to be around, and I didn't feel I had that in a lot of my other relationships. So my question, do you feel that, you know, because again, we're super close. Do you feel like it was my doing? Because I kind of do. Maybe not so much anymore. I think it's toned down a little bit, but I'm just curious for your thoughts there.
Yeah, that's a good question, and I think it's obviously.
Because sometimes I did, whether it's right or wrong, I felt like a bird. You know, I'm always at, what are you guys doing?
Yeah.
Oh, can I come? Like, you guys are hanging out, roommates. Okay, can I come?
Yeah.
Like, you know.
Totally, and that's like actually like great that you bring it up, because it's not something I've like totally had on the forefront of my mind, but I'm like glad you made me aware of that, because thinking about it, like we all are siblings, but having like a twin, it was always like a little bit like me and Jamie and then you. So like I always had her. We obviously were super close. We're the same sex. We're the same, you know, we did everything together, sports and everything. So, and we're the same age, obviously. So it always felt like we had that. So, and it wasn't anything like we were closer in one way versus with you. But I think just growing up, and, you know, it was definitely a different dynamic between having her with us by my side, and then also you. But with that being said, I definitely feel like when we were younger, we obviously like hung out a little bit, and then we went to college, and I think we got really close in college again once we went to the same college together. And then after college, you obviously like, you know, took a lot of the initiative to make us to ask to hang out. So I agree with you. I do think you take a lot of like the initiative to hang out, and it's not like to any other thing other than like you're just good at it, and like I appreciate it because honestly, it's just not like something I think about. And I like that you said you like hanging out with like a lot of our friends because they love hanging out with you, and we love when you hang out. I guess it's just never been like a forefront of my thought.
Yeah,
but you do.
I wouldn't.
Which I appreciate.
This is all new to me. Like,
Yeah.
I thought you all were hanging out all the time. Like,
No, we
We
do.
do,
It's
yeah.
just from my
initiates
perspective,
it, I
it's a lot of like
Yeah.
more times than not. I'm the one saying like,
Yeah.
what do you guys got going on? I mean, part of that now is right. I'm single. You guys you're in serious, long-term relationship.
Yeah.
You got on top of having Jamie.
Yeah.
You've got Tim, and Jamie's got Jack, and I have a great relationship with them too.
Right.
I don't really feel lonely, and this like to be just being honest, like I did before for a while.
Mhm.
I'm comfortable where I am now, but I still like I value the relationship so much, and even for people that are close to me, like I'll go out of my way to keep that relationship. I think relationships, even though it's not like forget intimate relationships, I think relationships in general really do require effort, and that's why I think as you get older in life, the amount of people kind of starts to dwindle. Like your funnel kind of starts to get smaller as you realize who's important in your life and who you want to maintain those relationships with, because they take work. Like you have to work on them. You have to water the flower, right?
So just walk me through the evolution of like the sibling relationship. Like, was it because I grew up with an older sister, and at some point we had different interests and different hobbies. But at one point, I was playing Barbies with her, she was playing video games with me. Like, there was a time where like we were doing the same things together. Like, growing up, was it just like the three of you doing the same activities? And then was there any point where like y'all went in a different direction and then came back? Like, or was it just steady group of three?
Yeah, it's a good question. I'll answer first. I don't think we ever really went our separate way. I mean, maybe
In high school.
I was gonna say like
Yeah.
high school. There was a time period where I think we were maybe a little more distanced for whatever reason.
What does that look like? Who's doing what? Like, is one person in
Just with
sports?
sports, we were all just so like we both
Very busy with
you were
sports,
busy
and like they do
sports,
everything
yeah.
together. They play on the same teams.
Yeah.
They go to the same practices. They
Have the
do
same
this.
friends.
I mean, so they were always. And then I didn't have a brother, so I played sports and I was doing my own thing, and you care about a lot of other things in high school. I cared about being the popular kid, and I just the values were just in a very different place, and we kind of became a little more distant. And then I went off to college for 2 years or a year, 2 years, whatever it was, before they were then, thankfully they went to the same school as me. So I think that was like really important in terms of bringing us back closer, was going to the same school. And I really felt like my duty as a brother and being protective and like really just supporting them and guiding them. I really felt that once they came into college. And I think that's what kind of drove us to get close, at least from my perspective, and then since there, I make a very conscious effort to continue that relationship.
Were you ever like in high school? Was there ever an arena or an environment where you were like, "Oh, it would be embarrassing to bring my sister along to this," or like?
I don't think. I'm trying to think. Like we might have gone to the same parties here and there. Like we were
just never really. Yeah, we didn't.
We never
really,
had like a bad. There was never
Yeah.
like we'd get mad. Like we definitely had arguments that would cause us to not talk for a week or whatever it might be. But there was never a huge falling out. It was just a little more distance. And then again in college, I don't know what it was, but again, like I really did feel a dude, and I just was like, I need to. I really like these people. It really hit me. These people are super, super important to me, and I need to maintain and build this relationship.
And I think
back.
we really like looked up to him because being in college is like a totally different world, especially as freshmen. I know you obviously came a year later, but it's just a new world. It's hard to navigate, and like you had a solid group of friends that you hung out with, and I think you just did a good job of like making sure that we were okay in college. We still hung out, but you were like more of a guiding protector, which is nice to have because college can be
maybe a
way
little
different.
overprotective at times, but
Yeah.
So we know like a defining moment when you were there for him was. recall, or do you ever think frequently about any sort of defining moment when he was there for you?
That's a good question.
They never really come to me, which is okay. I mean, they have each other, but like
I like how you answered.
I mean, they know at the end of the
Yes.
day, I've made it very clear that if
Yeah.
there's anything that comes up, I'm there. I'll say this, there's 2 people in the world, I think maybe my parents, but they would hate me if I said this. But there's 2 people in the world that I would take a bullet for, no doubt, and it's my sisters. And so like they know, and I've told them that,
Yeah.
they know I'm always there. I think they've got each other to kind of bounce things off of. I can't recall the time, maybe there was in your eyes, but...
No, I don't think there was like a specific time. I don't think there was one time where I was like, I need to go to him for this. I think it was just like you said, I think from our entire childhood, like having a big brother, you just kind of always knew he was there.
Let me let me rephrase maybe.
Yeah.
Like, was there a piece of advice, or was there something that you looked up to him?
Yeah.
And like, it's not conscious, it's not deliberate, but like something about your relationship with your brother helped you, you know, understand the world a certain way, or help you build a certain skill you found.
Yeah.
You know, like people have their role models, or people have like that one thing, right? For me, how about this? Like, as an example, like my relationship with Kobe, like one of the things that he's really inspired out of me is a more disciplined mindset.
Totally.
Right? I think a lot of the times where I'm disciplined, I think I can attribute it to very few people in the world where I can look up to them for that trait. So like, that's just an example.
Totally.
He's not trying to do that necessarily. I didn't go to him for help on discipline, but it is like role model-esque, if you will.
Absolutely. Yeah, I agree with that. I think I got a lot of like fitness and like lifestyle and health from him, that I looked up to him a lot. I knew he took that very seriously, and it was something that I wanted to start taking. I don't know what year it was, maybe a few years ago, when I was like, okay, I really want to be healthy. So I looked up to him for that, and I think like career stuff, I look up to him a lot. I think he's good at giving advice, and he gives a very unbiased perspective that I think I don't always get from, not friends, but even like parents, I think can be biased sometimes with like what choices they want you to make. But I felt like I could go to him with a lot of career things, and you know, trust that he's...
You ever heard that before? Oh, sorry.
I have, but that makes sense. Like, definitely. Like, she definitely comes to me for career stuff. And again, whatever it is, I'm there. She knows it. And I want to ask really quickly, just how is it? Because people are probably wondering that are listening, like, how is it having a twin? Like, talk about Jamie.
Yeah. Having
a twin. I mean, having a twin sisters is pretty awesome.
Yeah.
But
no, it's amazing, and like it's one of those things where like you can't really tell people what it's like. It's one of those things you have to have a twin in order to understand it, kind of thing. Like, it's one of those things you can't really explain because I don't know otherwise. So like, I don't know what it would be like if you didn't have someone who was in the same grade as you, who played the same sports as you, who had the same friends as you. That's just like what I grew up doing, and in so many ways, it's like the greatest thing ever. Like, I literally had a built-in best friend, and like we certainly had our moments of like fighting and arguing like any sibling does, but like at the end of the day, we like have the same best friends. We did the same sports together. We like trust each other no matter what. Like, she's the person I can go to, obviously, for anything, along with Matt. And so, I mean, it's of course a different dynamic that not many people get to experience, and you know, it certainly has its, you know, hard things too that any twin or sibling can relate to, with comparison and things like that. That's certainly like something that I think we both have struggled with at times, but I mean, it's great.
Does it ever get competitive? Because it seems very collaborative.
Yeah.
When you're sharing friends on the same teams.
Totally.
I hope it's collaborative now, but I bet it was competitive earlier in life.
Yeah, I think
sports.
Yeah,
I would be so competitive.
Popularity.
I would be like, whoa.
Yeah.
And stuff.
Yeah, totally. It is. I think I am lucky. I think we both, like, at the end of the day, it was more like we were competitive within ourselves. Like, it was never something that I wanted to be better than her at. Like, it was more, we just both wanted to be good at things. And so I'm lucky that, like, that didn't get in the way. But of course there was, like, you know, competitive in terms of, like, you know, when you feel like you're being compared in sports, when you play the same sports together, do you feel like you're being compared when you're in school and how you do in school together. You feel like you're being compared in friendships. So
is that perception or is that reality? Like, are
I
you
think it's
actually being
perception.
compared,
I think
or
it's
is
more
that more in
perception.
your head?
totally, and that's something that I'll be honest, I've worked through in therapy, because
Yeah.
a lot of it I think is perception, and certainly in some cases I think people might unconsciously compare us, but I think it's a lot of perception, and I think it's something that like I said, if you're not a twin, it doesn't totally make sense, but like
It's crazy because
It
I've
is a
never compared you guys.
and
Like,
that's the craziest
you guys
thing.
are very different
Yeah.
in terms of my relationships
Yeah.
with both of you are different,
Yeah.
but they're both so unique and beautiful. It's a different relationship, and I've never compared you two.
Yeah.
But hindsight, I can see it. High school. I mean, you guys played different sport. I mean, you played different positions in the sport.
Yeah.
And you guys are actually both very, very. Jamie is super competitive. I mean, you're
Yeah, she
competitive.
is.
We're all like our whole
Yeah.
family is super, super competitive.
Yeah. We are.
So I can imagine, especially when your values might be a little bit tainted when you're in high school.
Mhm.
Like who's more popular? Like, I don't know. Maybe you did, but like who's more popular?
Right.
Like all that stuff.
Yeah.
It's a blessing and a curse in some ways having
Mhm.
a twin. I mean, obviously the pros are just amazing,
Yeah.
and I'm sure I mean, you guys are probably as close as you've ever been
Oh yeah.
right now.
Definitely.
And I think it's also great that in college, because you guys did everything together.
Yeah.
Literally everything. Like there's the couple, the Markeith Morris, those twins that
Yeah.
lived together. And I think it was great. You guys did you tried purposely to join a different sorority.
Yeah. Yeah.
And in somehow, not surprisingly, you guys ended up, having the same group of friends.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
coming back kind of full circle.
Totally.
I thought
Oh,
that
you
was
guys
cool.
were a different fraternity or sorority, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. I actually forgot about that. But I mean, for the record, I never compared you to. I'll throw that one out there.
It is a perception.
But I'm trying to better understand that because we don't hear that topic often.
Yeah.
Like, is that? I mean, there's an actual other human being that is like raising a bar on you. Like,
Mhm.
I mean, I had the best I can compare it to is like I had an older sister, and I would get the same teachers that she got 2
Oh,
years later. But I was a class clown, so I was never measuring up to her. She was dot I's, cross T's.
Yeah.
But I didn't. There was no like twin label. Like there was no threat of this being an equal person or a fair comparison as is. Is that like the burden that a twin carries? Is this like
Mhm.
I had a-
Jealousy, right? I mean, I'm just thinking
Totally.
about my relationship with Dave,
Yeah.
who's my cousin, basically my brother.
Yeah.
And like, he was obviously a stud in sports, and I always compare myself to him and be like, I was super envious of
Yeah,
him.
but imagine he's like
Right, yeah, and then you're twins,
Right?
Yeah.
That takes it to another level, right?
It does, and it would be fun to hear, like, because I don't know if I've ever really talked about it with Jamie, so it would be fun to hear if she compares herself to me as well. I think to an extent she does, just based on what I know about her. But yeah, it's such an odd thing, and like you said, hearing people say that they've never compared us, it blows my mind because it's something that like I've done internally since we were little. So it's so nice to hear that, and like you said, it is a perception. It is like a little bit of a jealousy thing when you have someone you're doing everything with. It can feel I can be putting that pressure on myself.
Other people probably putting on it too, like coaches. Maybe inadvertently, teachers.
Parents. Yeah, it's interesting. It's an interesting dynamic, but I mean, like I said, the pros outweigh the cons.
Did that ever like? We don't have to get too hung up on this topic, but did that ever inspire you to like, besides the sorority difference, but like, did that ever make you want to be like, okay, I'm gonna get involved in something that she's not in? Because it's like when you're in the same sport, that's one thing, but if like somebody's writing music and somebody's boxing, like two different arenas. Like, did you ever feel like I need to split up a little bit and like just do my own thing?
That's so funny, and yeah, honestly. Yes, I've thought about it, but the funny thing is we are so similar in what we like and dislike. Like, there's truly, I think the only thing I could say that would be different were our career paths. Just our career paths. We obviously did, she's in finance and I went into teaching. And, but even that sometimes felt like, I felt like I was a little bit of the odd one out. I'm like, my whole family does business, but I'm going to do teaching. And so...
Why did you want to? Can we shift?
Yeah,
this?
that's a good shift right
I
there.
love the career path.
Yeah.
So talk about how you got into teaching, maybe the experience a little bit of entering basically into the workforce. I don't know how long you were a teacher in person before COVID hit, but just talk about that whole dynamic, and then obviously you've more recently made a switch to a totally different kind of role.
Was it 3 years of fourth grade or 4 years of third grade?
3 years of fourth grade.
Okay.
Yeah. It's funny. I don't know the exact reason, like why I chose teaching. I do know that when we were little, me and Jamie would play like teacher, and we'd like make each other like tests, and we would play teacher all the time. And I remember having a fifth grade teacher I loved, and I looked up to a lot. And when I thought about going into college and what I wanted to major in, like I said, like, you know, Matt's in business, my mom's in business, Jamie went into finance and business, and I was like, I just don't think.
Well, good for you for going against the grain, because I solely did it because of our mom.
Family,
and you could have easily done that too.
Yeah, totally. And I was like, I just don't think I'm going to be happy, like, in this career. I think I also was a little bit, I always was leaned more towards, like the language arts and that kind of thing, whereas I think Jamie and Matt were more math and that kind of thing. And so I was like, you know what, like, I think teaching would be awesome. I think I would be good at it. I think, you know, I love kids. So I'm like, I'm going to try it. So I did, and I was kind of happy about that too. Like you said, it gave me my own thing to focus on. And so, yeah, I did that. And then, like you said, I started my first year of teaching, which to anyone who's ever taught, it's just like the most wild thing ever to come out of college and then be managing like an entire class on your own. It was hard enough in itself. And then it was probably about 5 or 6 months, and then COVID hit. So COVID hit, and of course, everything went insane, and we were, you know, off school for 2 weeks, and then we were completely teaching from home for 3 weeks, and teaching, like, you know, fourth grade elementary school kids at that point was really tough. But what I will say, and why I maybe felt like I was successful in this area, was that because COVID hit and nobody knew what they were doing, it was almost like I could kind of take control and be like, well, no one knows what they're doing, so I'm going to like take what I can and do the best I can in this situation, and I can kind of be creative and see what works for my students. And it wasn't like I had to follow the grain of like what, you know, teachers are doing in front of me,
because there was no grain.
There's no playbook.
Yeah, so it was like that was kind of cool, and I felt like I had like a sense of control of like, okay, I want my students to learn this is how I think they're going to learn best, and, you know, collaborate with my team as much as we could to make that work. But my God, it was hard.
So it's like fourth grade over Zoom? Or?
It was over Google Meets, and I taught for a year of it. I taught in my classroom with no students, so I had to be there. And I also did a reverse commute because I lived in the city and, you know, went back, so that was tough. But yeah, I would sit in my classroom and I would teach over the computer.
And fourth graders had to sit on the computer and pay attention.
I mean, it was.
So what skills did you learn as a teacher? Because you've now you're doing something different.
Yeah.
So what skills did being a teacher?
Yeah.
I would imagine one is patience, because that's something I think about. I'm like,
yeah.
Whew, that would be tough. But
yeah. I mean, patience, communication. I mean, the amount of communication that had to happen between like the students, my coworkers, my administration, parents, like that was huge. I think I learned how to be really like I don't know if flexible is the right word, but like adapt to change quickly. I just had to be adaptable in those situations, and I learned how to take it and kind of roll with it. I learned how to be creative, and I think I learned to be like a really good listener. I think, you know, as a teacher.
That's super
so
important.
Communication, adaptability, good listener, creativity. That's why I had so much like wholehearted confidence in the transition of your career path, because the transition is just perfect. But if we're ready to go to like that new role that you're in now, it's a totally different field, which is
so sales and education. So that's nice. And
which, for you guys don't know, that's basically what MD does. He manages a bunch of little Alyssas in a completely different industry model, but
and MD was like one of the mentors that Matt actually recommended me when I was thinking. I wasn't even looking in sales when I first started. I'm like, I'm not going to do it. Like, it looks scary. I was intimidated by it. So I was looking at other parts of like, you know, customer success or professional learning and that kind of thing. And at some point I was, you know, coming up to sales. It kept coming back to me. And so I started telling Matt again about like what I was going through. And he's like, you need to talk to MD. Like, he is an SDR manager. He does this, you know, every day. He's really good at it. Like, have a conversation with him. And so that's when I talked to MD, and you know, you were so honest, and you were so well spoken about like what skills you felt like I needed in order to be successful in my career. And it's not like you sat there and said like, here's what you need. You were like, what do you feel like you're good at? Mm-hmm. And let me tell you if I think you would be good in this role. And I respected that a lot because I felt like it was really honest. And yeah, you were like, you know, I think you could, I mean, I don't know, from your perspective, it seemed like.
Which is interesting because I want to say from an outsider's perspective of someone that's not in sales, I would have probably initially thought that it probably might have not been the right choice for you because like you're not, I think like what people think around sales, like you have to be extroverted, you have to be very sociable. Yeah. And that's actually not the case at all. And I think you speak to some of the qualities that you saw that were like, because you were like, oh, she's going to be a home run.
Yeah, I mean, well, you said sales, it seemed scary. Yeah. It doesn't seem scary, it is scary. Like, let's just put it, like, it is a scary role, it's a scary career path, it's a wild ocean that you really have to dive into, and the last thing I wanted to do, and the last thing I do to anybody really, is try to sell them on a career path in sales. That's the last thing you want to do, is sell somebody who's not fit for it to go and take on that career path, because if you're not bought in, if you're not ready to bring your full version of yourself to that type of role, it becomes difficult, and when that role becomes difficult, you underperform, and when you underperform, you're not happy. And so it really was, you really have to start with what motivates you, what skills do you think you have, and you know, the rest, if you have a foundational skill set that I think it translates well from teaching. I think teachers are the best sellers. I think selling is about educating a problem and not a solution. That's what a teacher does. The only other question I had from me to you was like, well, what are you motivated by? Because you open your laptop and then you close your laptop. There's no completion-based work here, so you have to decide how much you're putting in. So I just, that's the type of questioning I go with is, you know, what kind of motivation do you have, and what kind of skills do you have, and if you marry the two and you bring it to that career path, I think anybody can be successful in sales.
So do you like it?
I do.
You're good at it. I think you're doing very well, it sounds like, but do you like it?
I do, and it's funny when you say, like, what motivated me. I think when I was first thinking about, like, there's a variety of reasons of why I decided to leave teaching. I think, you know, we could go into that another day, but one of the biggest ones was I felt, like, limited in my growth of, like, okay, if I don't want to be, you know, an administrator, where can I go from here? Because I felt like you said, go back to being competitive. Like, I'm a generally competitive person, and I felt like I wanted the work I put in, I wanted to see pay off. And I was like, that motivates me. Like, when I'm working hard and I see, you know, whatever it is pay off, that makes me feel good. And you were like, oh, that's great, because that's kind of like what, you know, it can be in sales, and I've totally felt that. And I'm like so happy with the change. I would never take it back. I feel like I am good at it. I feel like it does motivate me, and I've seen the payoff of, like, when I work hard, I see successful results.
And your general life is better, right?
Yeah,
there's no reverse commute.
Totally.
So like, as we interview candidates for a sales role, I always get asked, like, what's the number one challenge of starting that role? Yeah. And as I get further and further in my career, I become more and more removed from what I really felt in that moment. So I'm curious from you, I got two questions. One, what was the biggest challenge for you going into that role? And then the second thing, I want to do like a full circle thing here where we talked about you leveraging therapy, your own personal growth, anything from that you felt you had to tap into to face either that challenge in the role or just the role at large.
Yeah, totally. And especially, like, I think doing any new career path, while it was still in education, it was very different. I think confidence was, like, the biggest thing that I tapped into from using therapy, from, you know, you think about, like, insecurities and just, like, being secure in yourself and your abilities. I think that was a huge challenge for me, was just having confidence, like, that I can do this. But also, I think with sales, it's just, like you said, it's a very up and down game. I think there's a lot, sometimes that's not in your control. And I think you have to be okay with, like, riding the wave a little bit and knowing that, like, if you have a process that works, you know it works. And so you're going to keep either perfecting that process, or you're going to keep doing it because you know it's going to, you know, work out for you, because there is a lot in sales that you can't control.
This is like jazz music to my ears.
I mean, that applies to life too.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Is you have to focus on what you can control. I think you preach it, right? Your effort that you put in, and the outputs are the outputs.
Yeah.
But as long as you can control, with your inputs and what you're doing each day,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's going to give you a sense of inner peace and that I'm doing the work, and whatever happens, and then you're okay with that.
Mm-hmm.
Real quick,
Yeah, go ahead.
so insecurity, you have a different relationship with insecurity because of being a twin. One
Yeah.
that we can't relate to,
Mm-hmm.
right? That perception of constant comparison.
Mm-hmm.
One of the key traits or skills to bring into a sales career is confidence.
Yeah, totally.
So you had to overcome another arena of insecurity, and so that's a really cool point to think back to, like, some of the things you had to get over growing up in life. I think really truly has prepared you for how to face insecurity of going into sales.
Absolutely.
So that's really cool to see life application be brought into sales, where normally we always talk about, or I always talk about sales application or sales being applied to life.
Yeah, I can think of that for me too. I'm in the sales role as well, and I have to do a fair amount of networking events where I'm just going up and talking to, I mean, for the most part, people are older, like a lot older than me, that I probably don't have a lot of common with, and doing it and just getting therapy and being vulnerable with myself has made me feel so much more comfortable just to do it, because it's like, what's the worst that's going to happen here? Like, maybe the conversation's a little awkward. That's fine.
Mm-hmm.
I've had
Totally.
much harder conversations in therapy. I've done much harder stuff in improv and had to put myself out there. So it definitely, you can go from that and apply it to sales.
Does it help that Jamie's not in sales?
It does.
Okay.
Jamie would never.
You finally found your separate
that would be
arena.
a competitive thing
Same
for both
company.
of us. Oh yeah,
Just
we'd
getting
be.
constantly compared on a leaderboard with metrics.
Yes,
and numbers.
exactly.
Yeah,
I love seeing my name up there.
So
Love it.
we're gonna wrap up here. As I'm sitting here, I was just having this conversation. I just wanted, I'm so proud of you, and I'm getting a little emotional here, but it's just very cool to see your growth and what you've been able to do. So I said I was gonna get emotional here. I'm good. All right, I'm good. But I am. I'm really proud of you. So rapid fire questions. So if you've been listening to the show, you should know these. They don't change.
You should also know they're not very rapid.
They're
fun questions.
They're fun
Yeah,
questions.
good questions.
If there's more to the story of why something might be, feel free to share it. So the best piece of advice you've ever gotten, or just a really strong quote or something that's resonating with you?
It better be from me.
Ooh, I would say, I don't know a direct quote for it, but I would say something about change. I feel like there's a lot of scariness around change, and I feel like a lot of people don't do well with change, but I feel like change is the only way to learn and grow. So I don't know what the correct term would be, but change is good, and change allows you to grow.
One of the key pieces of advice that I've been coached in my career has been be malleable.
Yeah.
If you want to find a 2-word phrase to
There we go.
deliver
I like
that
it.
one.
Be malleable.
Nice. He wants you to give, now every time you get asked that question, Mike David told me,
Quoted by
MD told me.
Yeah, I put the quote around.
Okay, next question. It's my favorite one. If you could have dinner with anyone in the world, dead or alive, who would it be?
Oh, wow. Okay, this would just be a lighthearted one because I love soccer. So it would have to be, Mia Hamm.
Yeah.
I would love to.
Is she still married to Omar Garcia-Barra? Or is that?
I don't know.
Alright, anyways. Not important. The last question. What do you, I already know this, I think. Maybe I don't know this about you, but just what do you like to do in your free time? Hobbies, that kind of thing.
Oh yeah. I like exercising, working out. I like
Watching vlogs.
oh my gosh. I like reading a lot. I like doing self-help, but I also love reading thrillers and
You are the fastest reader I've ever seen.
Yeah, I do read really fast. If we're on a vacation, I have to
get
bring
through
8
5
books.
books
Yeah.
in a week.
I read really fast. So I love reading. I also really like cooking. I like to cook.
Best dish.
Oh gosh, best dish. Oh, you know what it's been lately, and my friends could attest to this. this phenomenal breakfast bagel with a hash brown, eggs, bacon, cheese, everything bagel, cream cheese.
Oh my goodness.
I'm already hungry, but now I'm even hungrier. Okay, well, again, thank you, Alyssa, for coming on and having a super, super cool conversation. And thank you all for your support, as always. Thanks for listening. We appreciate it so much. And if there's something you like, please tell us. If there's something maybe you don't like as much, tell us as well. We're happy to have a conversation. But thank you all so much for listening and for the support.
See you back in the arena.